She raised her only daughter with nothing but love and calloused hands, only to find out through Facebook that the girl got married without her. What happens when a mother's heartbreak turns into quiet revenge? Watch till the end, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that make your heart ache and heal at the same time. When the phone slipped from my hand, it wasn't the sound of the fall that broke me, it was the picture still glowing on the screen. My daughter Renee stood in a wedding gown, holding hands with a man I barely met. Her smile was radiant, her eyes alive. "Renee, did you get married?" My voice trembled. "Yeah, Mama." "Yesterday," she said casually, street noise crackling in the background. "It was just a small thing." Only family. Only family. That word hit me harder than the fall of the phone. I sat frozen, staring at that smiling girl who used to cry for me in the night, and realized I was no longer part of her definition of family. I deleted the photo, but it stayed burned behind my eyes. For 67 years, I'd believed family was everything. I raised Renee alone after my husband, Henry, passed away. I scrubbed floors and cleaned homes for the Hendersons and the Maxwells to pay for her schooling. Every aching knee, every cracked hand, every night I fell asleep over my sewing machine, I did it for her. I dreamed of her wedding for decades, me standing beside her, proud, teary-eyed, maybe holding her bouquet. But on an ordinary Tuesday morning in Atlanta, I found out through Facebook that she'd married Damian Lee, and the only people standing beside her were his parents, Franklin and Celeste. The caption read, "Family complete. Family complete without me." That night, as the ceiling fan hummed above my bed, I understood something cruel but clear. My daughter hadn't just drifted away, she'd closed the door. I called 3 times, straight to voicemail. My text got a single line hours later, "I'm fine, Mama, we'll talk later." But later never came. Over the next few days, memories poured in like waves that refused to stop. Renee at 5 years old, coughing through pneumonia while I worked 3 jobs and barely slept. Renee at 16, twirling in the sky blue gown I'd saved 2 years to buy for her sweet 16 party. Her hugging me and whispering, "Mama, you're the best woman in the world." Now, 28 years later, that same girl had cut me out of her life like a stain she couldn't wash out. When she first met Damian, she was still in college, bright, ambitious, and curious. He was polite, too polished. I cooked my best meal when he came over, fried chicken, baked mac and cheese, candied yams. He smiled, said thank you, but his eyes flicked around our tiny home like it was a place he couldn't wait to leave. After that, Renee changed. Her visits got shorter, her stories became shallower. The warmth she once had was replaced by a careful distance, as though she was embarrassed of where she came from. At her graduation dinner, I met Damian's parents. They spoke of trips to Italy and vintage wines while I sat quietly, pretending to understand. When I mentioned my job, silence filled the table until Renee hurried to change the subject. Later that night, she said softly, "Mama, you know, sometimes the way you talk might get misinterpreted. Damian's family is refined." That word never left me. Refined. Apparently, love and sacrifice weren't refined enough. As the years went on, I watched my place in her life shrink from mother to occasional visitor. I was told to call before coming over. Our Sunday dinners became maybe next week. By last Christmas, she spent the holidays entirely with Damian's family. Then February came. She called, her voice cautious but cheerful. "Mama, Damian and I are thinking about getting married." I screamed with joy. "Oh, baby, that's wonderful." "When's the date? What can I help with?" "Nothing's set yet," she said quickly. "We want something simple, nothing too elaborate." I nodded, trying to hide my disappointment. For months, she brushed off every question. "We're still figuring things out, I'll tell you soon." And then she vanished into work trips and family dinners that didn't include me, until that Tuesday morning. That cursed photo, that frozen smile, that caption, "Family complete." I spent the rest of the day pacing the house, reading every comment on her post. People congratulated her. No one asked where I was, not a single person. It was as if I had never existed. That night, I lay awake and accepted the truth. She hadn't forgotten me. She'd erased me. But she didn't know something vital. The woman she erased wasn't done living. The following days blurred. I kept busy polishing silverware, rearranging furniture, pretending that cleaning could fix the crack in my chest. But every time I passed her childhood room, memories dragged me under. The report cards I'd kept, the birthday letters, the note she'd written before college. Dear Mama, nothing I achieve will ever mean more than what you gave me. You're my hero. I love you forever. Forever had turned out to be a lot shorter than I thought. I tried to pray, but even my prayers sounded like questions. How could a daughter forget the woman who raised her alone? Was I too poor, too ordinary, too unrefined for her new life? Friday morning I called my sister, Aunt Loretta, in Birmingham. She married without me, I told her. Loretta's voice thundered through the phone. That girl's out of her mind. But you, Clara, you gave too much. You spoiled her. She learned you'd always be there no matter what she did. Her words stung because they were true. I had never said no. Never set boundaries. I gave and gave until there was nothing left but the expectation that I'd always understand. So what do I do now? I whispered. You live for you, Clara. You stop waiting for her to make space for you. Let her see what life looks like when you stop orbiting around her. After the call, I sat in silence for hours. Loretta was right. Renee had made her choice. Now it was my turn. Saturday morning, as I poured my coffee, my phone rang again. Unknown number. Hi, Mama. Renee's cheerful voice hit me like ice. We're back from Cabo. The wedding was amazing. Damien and I want to come by later and show you pictures. My throat tightened. What time? Around 5. We got you some gifts too. Souvenirs. As if trinkets from her honeymoon could replace the moment she'd stolen from me. All right, I said quietly. I spent the day cleaning the house anyway. Old habits die hard. I baked pecan danishes, brewed sweet tea, even set out her favorite linen napkins. But as I worked, one thought kept pulsing. Why am I still trying so hard for someone who erased me? At exactly 5, they arrived. Renee looked like a magazine ad sundress, tan lines, soft curls, and the glow of a woman in love. Damien gave a polite smile, his eyes scanning my home like it was smaller than he remembered. Mama, Renee hugged me. I missed you so much. Her perfume was expensive, sharp, not the soft jasmine she used to borrow from me. Everything about her screamed new life, new world, no room for me. Sit, I said. Tell me about the wedding. She glanced at Damien, then back at me. It was beautiful, Mama. Just us and his parents. Very private. Just you and his parents, I repeated. My hands trembled. It all happened so fast, she said. We didn't want to make a big deal of it. You know how I feel about fancy weddings? Lie. My daughter had always loved celebrations. She opened a bag and handed me a t-shirt that read, I Cabo, a seashell bracelet, and coconut candies. I smiled because that's what mothers do, but inside, each gift felt like a consolation prize for my humiliation. We talked for 2 hours about their honeymoon, their jobs, their apartment. She barely touched the pastry I'd baked. When they finally left, I stood in the silence they'd left behind, surrounded by cheap souvenirs and the echo of her laughter that no longer belonged to me. That night, I opened a notebook and wrote at the top, Plan for Independence, Clara Jameson. August 12. It was time to stop waiting for love that wasn't coming. I listed everything I had, my house, my savings, and the secret bank account I'd built over decades sewing dresses for neighbors, a nest egg I'd once planned to gift Renee for her wedding. Now, it would fund my escape. The next day, I visited a senior living community in Decatur that my neighbor had once mentioned, the Legacy at Willow Creek. It was warm, bright, filled with laughter and morning sunlight. The kind receptionist, Patricia, showed me around. Apartments with balconies, morning yoga, art classes, church service on Wednesdays, movie nights on Fridays. It didn't feel like an old folks' home. It felt like possibility. How do people like it here? I asked. Most of our residents come after painful transitions, Patricia said kindly, but once they settle, they're happier than they've been in years. Happier. I'd forgotten what that word felt like. I took the apartment with the garden view. Signed my name on the waiting list that afternoon. That night, for the first time in years, I slept peacefully. When I woke up, I made coffee, opened my curtains, and smiled. I wasn't waiting for Renee's call anymore. I had somewhere to be, somewhere that was mine. 2 days after I signed the papers, I sat at the kitchen table of the house where I'd spent 40 years looking at the walls that had watched me grow, age, and break. Every mark, every dent, every sun-faded photo carried memories of Renee, but I didn't feel sorrow anymore. I felt a strange, calm certainty. That house had been built on love and sacrifice, but it had also become a shrine to waiting. Waiting for her visits, waiting for her calls. Oh, waiting for the impossible. Now, I was done waiting. Monday morning, I put on my navy blue dress and walked to the bank. Mr. Lawson, the branch manager who'd known me for years, looked surprised when I asked to review all my accounts. Big plans, Mrs. Theses. Jameson? He asked kindly. Yes, I said, smiling for the first time in a long while. For once, they're mine. He showed me my statements, decades of discipline laid bare in neat black numbers. I wasn't rich, but I was steady. Independent, capable. I moved my secret savings into my name alone and scheduled an appointment to close the rest of my joint family accounts. Then I went to see Mr. Sanders, the local attorney who'd once helped me with property paperwork. I handed him my will, marked through the old version, and told him what I wanted. Half to charity, I said, a scholarship fund for single mothers. The other half to my daughter Renee, but with a condition. He leaned forward. What kind of condition? She must write a letter explaining why she made certain choices. Not to apologize, just to be honest. That letter will be the price of her inheritance. Sanders looked at me for a long time before nodding. That's a powerful condition, Mrs. Jameson. It forces reflection. I smiled faintly. Reflection is something she's avoided for too long. Walking out of that office, I felt lighter. For the first time in years, I was steering my own life instead of being a passenger in hers. That evening, as I packed boxes, my phone rang. Renee's name lit up the screen. I took a breath before answering. Hi, baby. Mama. How are you? Her voice was breezy, casual, as if nothing had happened. Damien and I were talking about you. We'd love to have you over this weekend, maybe for dinner. I looked at the half-packed boxes. I'd love to, baby. But I've got plans. Plans? She laughed softly. Since when do you have plans? Since now, I thought. I'm just taking care of a few things, I said. Don't worry about me. She hesitated. Okay, well, call me if you need anything, all right? For years, I'd been touched when she said that, but now it sounded more like habit than love. I hung up, finished labeling the final box, and slipped the ring Henry had given me back into its velvet case. I didn't cry. I just whispered to the house, "Thank you for sheltering me, but it's time to go." That Friday, the moving truck pulled into my driveway. 2 men loaded my furniture, my sewing machine, and a few old photo albums I couldn't leave behind. By noon, my house was empty. Before stepping out for the last time, I took one last look around, the scuffed baseboards, the worn couch, the smell of lemon polish and old wood. Then I locked the door and didn't look back. By evening, I was standing in the lobby of The Legacy at Willow Creek, holding a folder of papers that confirmed it. This was home now. Patricia, the receptionist, greeted me warmly. "Welcome, Mrs. Jameson. Your apartment's ready. We put you in Unit 2B, the one with the garden view you liked. I followed her down a bright hallway lined with paintings of Georgia wildflowers. The air smelled faintly of lavender and coffee. When she opened the door to my new apartment, I gasped. A soft beige sofa, white curtains that danced in the breeze. A tiny balcony overlooking blooming magnolias. It was small, but it was mine. That first night I unpacked slowly. A single photo of Henry, one of Renee as a little girl smiling with ice cream on her cheek. The pink letter she'd written me at 18. I placed it in a drawer, not to dwell on, but as a reminder of who I used to be. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the window. I brewed my first cup of coffee in the new kitchen, opened the balcony doors, and felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Peace. At 9, Patricia knocked to introduce me to some neighbors. "This is Mrs. Delilah Monroe. She used to be a schoolteacher," Patricia said, smiling. "And this is Mr. Anderson, our resident woodworker." They invited me to breakfast in the dining hall. At first, I hesitated, but curiosity tugged at me. The dining room was filled with laughter, clinking plates, and people chatting about books and movies instead of family drama. I hadn't been around that kind of energy in years. "Mrs. Jameson, do you dance?" Mr. Anderson asked. "I used to," I admitted. "Well, we've got a ballroom class every Thursday," he said. "You should join. Everyone's terrible at first. That's half the fun." I laughed, surprising myself with the sound. "Maybe I will." That week I tried everything: yoga, crafts, movie night. Each new activity was a small rebellion against the life I'd lived before. I even joined a knitting group led by Mrs. Rodriguez, a sharp, witty woman who reminded me of my sister Loretta. "You've got a steady hand," she said, examining my first scarf. "You'll fit right in here." That compliment, small as it was, made something inside me bloom. For decades, no one had noticed my hands unless they were useful. Cooking, cleaning, holding. Never creating. Never for me. Days passed in gentle rhythm. I'd wake early, make coffee, sit on the balcony to watch the gardeners at work. At night, I'd walk down to the lounge, play cards with my neighbors, and fall asleep to the soft hum of contentment. I no longer checked my phone every few hours. I no longer waited for Renee's messages. I'd stopped expecting them. Until Thursday night. It was nearly 9 p.m. when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Mama?" Renee's voice trembled. "Where are you?" "I went to your house. It's empty. The neighbors said you moved out." "What's going on?" For a moment I almost softened. The panic in her tone sounded genuine. But then I remembered all the mornings she hadn't called, all the times she'd left me waiting. "I'm fine, baby," I said evenly. "I just moved to a place that fits me better." "Better? You moved without telling me?" "Mama, that's not normal." I almost laughed. "Neither is getting married without inviting your mother." She went silent. "Where are you?" she finally asked, voice smaller now. "I'm at the Legacy at Willow Creek in Decatur." "It's a beautiful place. I have friends, activities, my own space." "A retirement home?" she said, her tone almost defensive. "No, sweetheart, a community. A place for people who finally decided to live for themselves." Renee exhaled, confused. "Mama, are you mad at me?" "I'm not mad," I said quietly. "I'm just done waiting." She didn't answer right away. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered. "I know," I said, "but you did. But you did. And now, I'm healing, just not in the way you expected." Before she could reply, I told her I loved her and hung up. Then I sat on the balcony under the night sky and cried, not from pain, but from release. Over the next few weeks, I built a new life. I joined the Thursday dance class. Mr. Anderson became my patient partner, teaching me to waltz again after 40 years. On Fridays, we watched movies projected on the lawn, old black and white films with buttery popcorn and laughter that carried into the warm night air. Every day, I felt more like myself. Not the mother, not the servant, not the afterthought, just Clara. When my phone rang now, I didn't rush to answer it. Sometimes I let it ring. Sometimes I didn't check it at all. I was busy. One Sunday afternoon, as I was tending the flowers on my balcony, Patricia knocked on my door. "You've got visitors," she said with a knowing smile. "A young couple," said their family. My stomach tightened, but my hands stayed steady. When I entered the visitors' lounge, Renee and Damien stood up. Renee looked smaller than before. Her makeup couldn't hide the guilt in her eyes. Damien looked uncomfortable, his hand resting stiffly on her shoulder. "Mama," she said softly. "Thank you for seeing us. Have a seat," I replied. She looked around, visibly surprised by how elegant the place was, the bright windows, the artwork, the polished floors. "It's beautiful here." "It is," I said, "and peaceful." Damien cleared his throat. "It must be expensive." There it was. I smiled faintly. "I've worked a long time, Mr. Lee." "I can afford my peace." Renee shot him a look before turning to me. "Mama, we were worried. We thought maybe something happened to you." "Something did?" I said. I stopped pretending. She blinked. Pretending? Pretending that being left out didn't hurt. Pretending that I'd always be waiting. I finally stopped. Her eyes filled with tears. "Mama, I made a mistake. I should have told you about the wedding. I raised my hand gently. "I don't want excuses. I just want honesty." "I was scared," she admitted, her voice trembling. "Scared Damien's parents would look down on you. They're judgmental, and I didn't want them to see where I came from. I was ashamed, and I hate myself for it." Her confession hit me hard, not because I hadn't suspected it, but because hearing it aloud made it real. "Renee," I said quietly, "I spent 30 years cleaning other people's houses so you'd never have to feel ashamed of yours. If you can't stand tall in the life I gave you, then you've forgotten what real pride looks like." Tears spilled down her cheeks. Damien looked away. "Mama, can we fix this?" she whispered. "There's nothing to fix," I said. "There's only what's next." "What's next?" "You learning to respect me," I said calmly. "And me learning to love myself enough not to chase you." Renee sobbed, reaching for my hand. For the first time, I didn't rush to comfort her. I let her cry. I let the silence speak for me. When they finally left, I stayed in that lounge long after they were gone, breathing deeply, feeling something I hadn't felt in years, peace that didn't depend on anyone else. That night, during community dinner, Mrs. Rodriguez asked, "Everything okay, Clara?" I smiled. Better than ever. For the first time in my life, I meant it. 6 months later, I still wake before sunrise. Old habits don't die easily, but now they come without heaviness. I brew my coffee, open my balcony doors, and let the morning air brush my face. From here, I can see the gardens blooming, the white lilies, the trimmed magnolias, and the same wooden bench where Mr. Anderson and I sometimes talk about our younger days. I'm not lonely anymore. Loneliness comes when you're surrounded by people who make you feel unseen. I left that kind behind. Now my life is full in quiet, simple ways. Mondays are yoga mornings. Tuesdays, knitting. Thursdays, dance class. On weekends, we drive to places I used to only see in postcards. Savannah, Charleston, tiny southern towns with antique shops and friendly strangers. Every day, I learn to enjoy the world without asking permission. I hear from Renee sometimes. Short messages, polite check-ins. "How are you, Mama? Thinking of you." I answer kindly but briefly. I don't owe explanations anymore. Then, one morning in early March, I received a thick envelope with no return address. My name, written in neat, careful handwriting, sat centered on the front. Inside was a letter typed on white paper. The lawyer's logo printed in the corner told me exactly what it was before I even read it. It was from Renee. I sat on my balcony, unfolded it carefully, and began to read. "Mama, I know you asked me to write this letter one day, but I didn't expect it would feel this hard. I've been thinking about what happened for months. You deserve to know the truth, not excuses, but reasons. When I met Damien, I wanted him to love me without judgment. His parents came from a world I didn't understand. I was terrified that if they saw where I came from, our tiny house, your work uniform, the life you built with sweat instead of money, they would think less of me. And maybe they did. But the worst part, Mama, is that I thought like them. I let their eyes decide what was valuable. I wanted them to see me as their equal, and somehow I thought that meant hiding you. I told myself I was protecting you from their judgment, but really, I was protecting myself from my shame. The truth is, I married Damien without you there because I wanted to belong. And now, months later, I realize that I lost the only person who ever truly made me belong anywhere. I see your pictures online, the garden, the dinners, the trips, and I can tell you're happy. I'm proud of you, even if it hurts that your happiness doesn't include me. If this letter is the only way to earn your forgiveness, I'll write it again and again. But I understand if forgiveness isn't what you want anymore. Love, always, Renee. By the time I finished reading, tears had blurred the words, but they weren't the same kind of tears that used to fall in the dark. They were quiet, grateful ones. She had finally faced her truth, not perfectly, not gracefully, but honestly. I folded the letter carefully, slipped it into the same drawer as the pink note she'd written at 18, and smiled. The 2 letters. One from the girl who adored me, one from the woman who'd forgotten how. Finally sat side by side, like 2 halves of the same story. That afternoon, I went for a walk around the garden. The air smelled like jasmine and freshly cut grass. I saw Mrs. Rodriguez chatting with a group by the fountain and waved. "Clara," she called out, "you're glowing today." "What's the secret?" "Peace," I said simply. She chuckled. "Must be contagious." Maybe it was. I'd spent decades pouring all my light into someone else, leaving myself in the shadows. Now I understood that peace isn't found in being needed. It's found in knowing you deserve to exist even when no one needs you. One evening in late spring, I was sitting in the lounge when Patricia approached. "Mrs. Jameson, there's someone at the front gate asking for you." My heart skipped. I knew who it was before she said the name. "Your daughter, Renee." For a moment, I considered saying no, but something inside me, not weakness, not nostalgia, just a gentle curiosity, said yes. When Renee walked in, she looked different. No makeup, no designer bag, no confident posture. Just a woman stripped of pride, her eyes full of exhaustion and longing. "Mama," she whispered. I stood still. "Renee," she took a trembling breath. "I didn't come to ask you for anything. I just wanted to say I read your will." My heart tightened. "I wrote the letter," she continued softly, "not for the inheritance. I don't care about that anymore. I wrote it because I needed to say it. And I needed to see you one last time." Her words trembled like glass. I motioned for her to sit beside me. "You did the hardest part already, being honest." "I don't deserve forgiveness," she murmured. "Forgiveness isn't a reward," I said quietly. "It's a release, for both of us." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I wish I could go back." "You can't," I said gently, "but you can go forward differently." For a long time we sat in silence, the way mothers and daughters do when there are no right words left. Then I reached out and held her hand, not as an invitation, but as closure. "Take care of yourself, Renee," I whispered. "And remember where you came from, not with shame, but with gratitude." She nodded, sobbing softly, and hugged me. This time, I let her. But when she left, I didn't look back. Weeks passed, and I never heard from her again. Maybe she would call one day, maybe she wouldn't. But I had already made peace with both outcomes. I spent my mornings in the garden, my evenings dancing in the community hall. I laughed more easily, loved more gently, and carried my solitude like a jewel instead of a burden. Sometimes when I see younger women here visiting their mothers, I smile. not with envy but with hope that they never take those visits for granted. One Saturday during our weekend trip to Lake Lanier, Mrs. Rodriguez leaned over and said, "You know, Clara, I envy how calm you are. You look like a woman who's finally figured out life." I laughed softly. I just figured out that love without boundaries isn't love, it's servitude. Once I stopped trying to earn what I already deserved, everything got quiet inside. She nodded. "That's wisdom, my dear. You should write it down. Maybe I will one day." Last night, as I watered the begonias on my balcony, I thought about my younger self, the woman who once cried over a Facebook post, who thought her worth vanished when her daughter stopped calling. If I could speak to her now, I'd tell her this: you were never just someone's mother. You were always enough, even when no one said it. You gave your love freely, and when it was thrown away, you built a new life with that same love and turned it inward. That's not loneliness. That's power. And as the sun dipped behind the magnolias, painting the world gold, I whispered a prayer of gratitude, not for Renee's change, but for mine. Because the truth is, revenge doesn't always come in fire or fury. Sometimes it comes quietly, as peace. I chose peace, and that choice became the most beautiful form of revenge I could imagine. If this story touched you, if you've ever been the one who gave everything and had to learn to stand alone, drop a heart in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of strength, forgiveness, and rebirth. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply living well.